Now, I am being rather critical of this, but honestly, I think it's pretty good. It's just, you know, I would like it if it was better. But there's still a lot to like about it as it is. Um, I do have some issues with it. I have some issues with some of the awkwardly inserted comedy sequences. I have some issues with the uh, there's a certain amount of inconsistency with the editing that should probably be addressed. Hopefully, would be addressed in the next season. Maybe they could allocate a larger CG effects budget. I don't know, but honestly, I don't have it as many problems with it as I did with Super Mega Force. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to like. I mean, there are some issues with the acting, in which cases it's like, Doctor what's her name? I can't remember her name. She's not quite. She's not quite David Fielding, and you know, having some sort of reason for the powers to choose who's wielding them. I mean, sure, that does kind of make sense, but for for like for this, they essentially just stumbled upon them by accident, and you know, I guess you could say that they were allowed to wield them uh, because they were awesome, but they're not quite as, say, like, for instance, um, Jason Lee Scott uh, was one of the most accomplished martial arts masters in uh, on planet Earth, or at least that's my interpretation of it, in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Billy Cranston was a genius. He managed to figure out how to interface with the morphing grid, an as of yet unknown source of energy. Um, Trini was a damn good fighter. Zack became a good fighter. Kimberly was pretty good in a fight, but yeah, they were all. It's not like having weird selections for who gets to be a Power Ranger isn't common, but you know, it's a little. It's a little not quite as justifiable as I would say it was in, for instance, say RPM, because Flynn McAllister, the Blue Ranger, he was noble and brave to a fault. All of them were pretty noble and brave to a fault. Well, for that matter, in RPM. Scott, especially, he was a good leader. Really, the main problem that I have is that this whole thing seems a little bit rushed. I know the first episode of MMPR was pretty damn rushed, and I'm glad they didn't do all this in one episode, but they could have taken 2 or 3 more episodes to introduce us to the team, maybe show us who they are, maybe, have a little more development for them. kind of like how RPM did. And you know, it's not like in Doctor Who where either he goes around deleting history, or where the Doctor goes around deleting history, or something happens that deletes certain events in history. There have obviously been Power Rangers before them because they know what the name is. You know, there's like, there was the legendary war in Super Mega Force. There was Lightspeed Rescue and Lost Galaxy, who both worked for the government, and I think Time Force did too. Overdrive, I think, was a similar premise. That's where they knew who they were, and then there was, you know, there's stuff like Jungle Fury. My point is, there's no reason for them not to know what all of this is. Excuse me. Because in universe, the Power Rangers have existed for the last 20 years. Taking off 19 years, yeah. Taking off like a year for SPD, which was set in the future, which is actually set in like 5 or 7 years. And we're nowhere near the level of technology that they had in SPD. And the re-airing of Mighty Morphin in 2010. Which was actually what wound up setting Saban back 2 years, because usually they'll adapt a Sentai series 1 year after the series is finished airing. You know, they get the suits, they buy the suits from Toei, and then they make then they produce the series. That's why Samurai, I think it was Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, immediately followed Go Onger, which was the counterpart to RPM, which to me personally doesn't sound all that great. I haven't actually, speaking of Sentai, I haven't actually seen Kyoryuger, so I have no idea like if they're using stock footage from Kyoryuger in this, and maybe that's what some of the good effects are, or if that's possibly like part of the reason why some of the editing seems a little inconsistent, because they're using stock footage, which I highly disapprove of, because I like it when the series goes in its own direction and it essentially just abandons the Sentai premise entirely, aside from like the suits. That's why I really like. That's not really why I like RPM, but RPM is a good template for how to make a Power Ranger series, because sorry about that, I had to adjust the microphone, because they completely ignored all. They just went Mad Max / Terminator on the series, as opposed to using the essential plot of Go Onger, which was a good idea, because they that meant that they could just have a really good story, which is something that I'm not entirely sure this lacks. We'll have to get into it a little bit, but it certainly could be paced a little better. Like, you know, it's good that he didn't just Ranger Green didn't just slink off into the forest while his dog was being attacked. It's a good thing that he did actually go out and fight that guy. I think his name is Fury. I'm not sure, but you know, if there had been a little more to his character other than he fences, it's like, okay, um, you've got like in fact, let's use Flynn McAllister again. Uh, he was a policeman. He was a fireman. He was a foreign aid worker. He was. I'm probably not getting that right. He was. He entered into all kinds of jobs that he wanted to help people, and he kept getting canned because he was doing his job too well, because essentially people were just didn't really, the people that were in charge didn't really want him doing his job. They were a little corrupt, a little uncaring, and despite having made it to safety himself, he went back out, and he went out of Corinth and rescued, I think it was a school bus full of children. It might have just been one girl, but it was still, only he risked his own life to save people, and he continued doing that. That he had been shown to have, he had been shown to want to help people before he became a Power Ranger, before he was introduced. Not before he was introduced, after he was introduced, but it was still